I was wondering about imagination. So I had to talk with Kelley Armstrong. She's a best-selling fantasy author. Why is it important to have a good imagination?
A good imagination allows you to think of things that don't currently exist. So it can be the fun stuff, whether you're imagining griffins or dragons or jackalopes, but it can also be the more serious stuff like imagining where you want to be or visualizing what you want to do with your life, thinking what would it be like to be a writer? What would it be like to be a teacher?
Are imaginary things more or less important than real things?
I don't think they're either one. I think that they're a different thing, and it's important to recognize the difference between something that is imaginary and something that is real. But kids can from a very young age. So a lot of times you will hear people say we shouldn't teach kids imaginary things because then they won't know the difference between real and imaginary, and it's just not true. And what I hate seeing is when people try to rein in that imagination. I feel like when you're very young, you're allowed to come up with these crazy ideas and have imaginary friends and invent things. And the older you get, the more people are saying, be serious. Don't be thinking these wild things. Stop daydreaming and start living in the real world.
Honestly, I wouldn't be happy if somebody told me that.
Hopefully nobody ever will.
How can imaginary things like characters and stories help us in the real world?
Well, one thing that characters and stories can do, especially for younger readers, but also the exact same for adult readers, is model behavior. And I'm not saying that characters in stories show you how to do the right thing, because quite often they show you what's the wrong thing. They show us kids or adults making choices and how that works out. And people say to me that it then helps them doing their own things, imagining what it would be like for the character. And also in books, we often put characters through really bad, horrible things that are hopefully worse than what the person is going through. So I will have adults say, I read this book at a really bad time, but what was happening to this character was worse than what was happening to me. And I could take strength from that, from seeing what they are doing and sort of be inspired by it.
So like sometimes like people read books and say, oh my gosh, I was so inspired. I think I'm gonna go with that, do what that like character did. Like I read this book about a girl whose favorite book was banned from the library, and she somehow managed to get the book back in the library.
And yeah, and in a case like that, someone can read about a girl getting a book that unbanned and then think harder about what banning books means and get the chance to see it from angles that they wouldn't have seen it from before. And then they might think, I'm going to go and do the exact same thing. So there's all different ways that they can see that and make their own choices.
How do you keep from losing your imagination? Like, I know some kids may grow up like when they're older to like fantasy, secretly like fantasy, but when they were teenagers, their parents said, like, no, you can't read that. You gotta actually read serious stuff. How do you prevent that?
How do you prevent that? If they're kids, then the best way of preventing that is for the parents or grandparents or somebody in their life, teachers, somebody to keep encouraging them and to not say you should be reading something more serious. I'm not saying that's not what you should be reading. There's a good balance there. Certainly you can read other things. You can read classics, but let them keep on reading what they want to read.
How can grown-ups use their imagination, like at work?
It's a way for them to see other possibilities. It's a way for them to brainstorm, what we talk about outside the box, to see new ways of doing things. For example, my son is in engineering. He is in school still, but I always tell him that when he's doing his resume, include the fact that he's done screenwriting and directing for small, things with his friends. And he always says, well, what does that matter? And I said, it shows that you have that creativity. It shows that you are not just a completely science and computer guy. It shows that you can use your brain to brainstorm and look outside and get new ideas. And that works no matter how technical your job might be.
Can you teach someone to have an imagination, or does it just come naturally?
No, I don't think that it's natural at all. I think that it is completely something that is learned. I believe that my own imagination came from reading. My parents encouraged me to read early, and I read everything I could get my hands on. So for me, that got my imagination going. I think if somebody didn't have that experience, it's just a matter of encouraging it, getting them to think about things that don't exist, getting them to imagine worlds or imagine objects, imagine something that doesn't currently exist. And the more they do it, the more they're exercising that muscle, and the easier it will be.
If you've been wondering too, subscribe for more big questions.